something that was said.
Are we good to go, Shailene?
Oh yeah, it's live now, it says.
Okay. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Native Wellness Institute Power Hour. Today, we are going to talk about murdered and missing Indigenous women, relatives, and we would just like to start today with an opening prayer as tribes all over the nation are coming together to pray, to gather, to find solutions to this epidemic that's going on in our nation and across Turtle Island. We, as the Native Wellness Institute, just want to start today in a good way and just ask, I want to ask my elder, Patsy Whitefoot, if she would just offer a prayer for all of those who are thinking about those who have been murdered and missing, for the families who struggle. So Patsy, would you say, offer us a prayer as we begin this power hour?
Just want to greet you all first in our language of the Yakama Nation people and all of our tribes that are part of the Plateau Nations. So this morning or this afternoon, I just want to be grateful to our creator, Tumanwitla, for bringing us all together in this circle of healing and wellness. And as we delve into this particular topic, we know that there's much pain and anguish around our missing and murdered Indigenous families. And so we ask for strength and well-being and healing, from this destruction that has devastated many of our families and communities across Indian country, including Canada and other Indigenous peoples, wherever they may be in the world. So asking, for grace and humility and, in that we never forget our relatives who've gone missing and are murdered. They are still a part of our life, just as our ancestors are a part of our life as well. So this afternoon, look forward to our conversation and ask the Creator to be with us always in our journey of healing and well-being. Kwitlau out.
Aye. Awesome. Thank you, Patsy. And so, Patsy, why is this issue important to you? What makes it an issue that you have gone from, the state legislation, you're on MMIW task force in Washington State. So why is this issue important to you?
Well, I think the issue of just the well-being and the well-being of girls and women in general is important to me. And along the journey of my own path, my youngest sister, went missing over 30 years ago. And she was such an individual that also was an independent young lady. And she leaves behind not only family, but a legacy of determination, self-determination for the future of our tribal communities. And in her role, she lived with me as a younger sister, as my two younger sisters did. The previous year before she went missing, we had several losses in our family. And one of those losses included the loss of her baby, her one and only baby, due to sudden infant death syndrome. And then the loss of our matriarch. And our family was our grandmother who had raised us in White Swan, raised me from the time I was a young child. And so there are major losses, death due to death and or health reasons that occur in our communities. And so when that occurred, I believe that truly impacted her life as well. And as a younger sister, the youngest sister living with me, she was very attached to the young children, to my children, but also our other grandchildren and children who are part of the family. And so she had an abundance of love and support and vision for the future of the children as well. And so I'm here because of that, because how she touched me personally and also how she touched the lives of our children. I can see that today in the lives of our children, because she wasn't, as I said, very independent, but she practiced a number of, aspects of our lives as tribal people. She was an artist. She loved to write. She loved to read books, about health and well-being. And then she was an avid all-around sports woman. She excelled in basketball. She excelled in softball. And when she traveled around the Northwest, she often came home with either the most valuable player or an all-star award. And so just want to take that determination and persistence that she had as a young lady and allow that to live on in the lives in the future of who we are as families. I do want to add, though, that she extended her life behind sometimes the boundaries that are placed on women, in our tribal communities sometimes, and that there are roles only for men or roles only for women. And she also was a fisherwoman, fishing on the Columbia River, side by side by her male relatives from other tribes. We were related, we have relations, of course, in Oregon with the Warm Springs people and Umatilla and Nez Perce. And so it wasn't unusual for her to go camping along the river or camping in the mountains, and oftentimes on her own, camping in the mountains by herself to gather the foods and the medicines, and then also take family members with her. And it wouldn't be a weekend event or overnight event. It would be weeks long, opportunity for her to gather our foods and medicines, and then to fish along the Columbia River and gathering the fish, and also go hunting. One day at home, I was at home and just with my children in the house, and she came back home and walked in the door. She says, "You're going to have to get ready. I have an elk that we're going to have to clean and we're going to have to get." And I thought, oh my God, elk's very big around here. And so it took us a good day just to do that, to do the cleaning and, quartering it up and cutting it into dices just to can. And I think we got, several cases of, elk meat to have, but she also shared that with family as well. Once we were done, she shared that, what she had gathered with family members and relatives. And so it's that kind of determination and persistence about, where we're going in the future as a people, and that she also modeled for my children, as well as our nieces and nephews who are a part of our family, plus extended relatives wherever she was. So with that kind of life and background in her own experience, I want to continue to honor her life and build up that kind of legacy of us as tribal people, in that we do endure, we are persistent, and we also are very humble in the kind of work that we do. And it wasn't unusual for her to, in her artwork, to, share her blessings, to share the prayers and the visions she had. She and another sister that lived with me and has since been deceased as well. I know that my other sister missed her very much, and it always thinks, I always think about that when I talk about them, is that I feel like they went together because they were both practicing artists, writers, and they also played sports just as I did. Our whole young women, we were all into sports. And so it's something that I witnessed, with not only myself and my family, but other family members, when someone deceases, that others have a longing for them and may, just will themselves to death. And I saw that, with family members. And so we want to continue to give hope and vision to our children. In my case, I just had a great granddaughter last night.
Congratulations.
My daughter's daughter just had a baby last night. And I'm here in Coeur d'Alene to celebrate that. And I think about my great-grandchildren that I have several now. But again, it's that vision and strength that my sister Daisy Mae Heath had, that I want to continue to impart that amongst our children and have them learn to know who family members were and the history of who we are and where our ancestral beginnings began. And so with that, I'm also doing research on, the diverse background that we have. In the case of my sister, Daisy May, she was Yakima, but also Warm Springs tribal member as well. So it means extending the family research that I'm doing, to Warm Springs and just asking a lot of questions, but also doing the work with book writers, people who are involved in writing books and manuscripts, those kinds of things. And it gives me great pleasure to be able to do that, because if we grew up in a household where, our grandfather in this long house in a place called Medicine Valley, where we were raised as young children, he would provide drumming and singing for us and as young children in our big long house, and we only had one small room for the kitchen. We'd all be in the living room. It was like the living room where we lived, and he would make us all line up. And back in those days, I'm like over 70. And so I just think about those days years ago and growing up in that household. He would make us line up in the house like we were in the longhouse, because the longhouse was away. But he would have us all just put cloth on our backs, and he would be singing and drumming, and we'd be there dancing, as young people, young children in the home. And I just think about those very humble beginnings that we had as a family, and continue to remind ourselves that we are a humble people and that we have responsibility to not only family, but also to the land and the mountains and the water, the rivers, and the animals, and all of our relations that we have in this world. And that's exactly how my sister Daisy May was. She went to the mountains to be by herself. She'd have time to pray and to think about our relationships with the land and the mountains, and to the river, to think about the relationships of our family all along the river who are fishing during fishing season here in the Northwest, as well as just being there at the river. It's so special and so sacred to be at these places of the natural world and learning from the natural world around us. And so I just want to say it's a wonderful pleasure to be here. I didn't realize, how emotional it was for me to acknowledge the birth of a great granddaughter, another great grandchild in my life.
Yeah.
So I want to thank my sister, acknowledge my sister for that as well, because I know she would have been happy. Yeah. She would have been saying, I'm going to make a basketball player out of you, or I'm going to make you learn how to do this, because that's what she did with the mother of my daughter. She did that to her when she was in high school, and she would show her how to shoot. And when she made the basketball team, she came home and said, the coach doesn't want me to shoot like that. But I said, you're getting, your skills from the best person in the Northwest.
Well, and recently Patsy and I were both in attendance in Washington, up at the Tulalip tribe, when Washington State passed 2 House bills that had to do with creating something similar to an Amber Alert for Indigenous, tribes in Washington State. That, because right now we don't, but this would just be specifically for when one of our people go missing, and it would be similar to an Amber Alert that you get on your cell phone. And so, Patsy, did you want to talk a little bit about, how have you been involved with that?
Okay. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. I was personally involved in that, and just sharing the story of my sister, since she did go missing and hasn't been found after 30 years. I testified both orally and in writing to our state legislature, but previous to this legislation, in the past few years, there have been several other bills that have passed, and so have been involved in all of them as they have continued to come forward. And so I'm involved in the task force as a family representative to the state task force. And we're working with other individuals as well in this task force. And it's, I'm so pleased that our state looks to the families for leadership and guidance and everything that we're doing in terms of working with the Attorney General's office and impacting changes and improvements in these colonial systems that we have in government, such as state government. I mean, all forms of government, have these colonial systems, and it's up to us to break down those doors that are creating these barriers for our families and our communities. And so I think essentially that's what we're doing. And when we're responding to the proposed legislation, we're letting the state legislature or policy makers or Congress know what exactly it is that we want. And it's up to each and every one of us to speak out and to write letters stating what is needed in Indian country, stating that, and just following up with Congress, or just saying, good job, maybe they did a good job. So we want to be able to not only pat them on the back, but we also have to be responsible for taking action and following through on the proposed legislation. And so it's a matter of building relationships as well with our governor and with members of the legislature, as well as members of Congress. Those relationships are so key to doing the important work that we need here in Indian country.
Mm. Well, and I just want to say that I appreciate you, Patsy. I appreciate you for everything that you do for our people, for our children. The other thing that Patsy does is she's one of the leaders in the Swan Dancers. And I've seen them, as young women, learning the culture, learning the ways, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And we need more of our people to step up. And, Patsy, Mary Lee, Eleanor, they all teach the children how to gather the traditional foods and how to do all the things that our ancestors did, and part of that, going out and doing that, is healing. And that heals our hearts from the grief and the loss and the death and the murdered and missing. And so we're just really grateful, and we're really honored, Patsy, to have you on the Native Wellness Institute Power Hour today. And is there any last things you would like to share with all of the world out there?
Well, as a great-grandmother, I just want to say I really feel the power hour in this time, just talking with you, and also just realizing I just became a great-grandmother again. So I feel that power of, a new life again. And it just makes me want to continue to do more. And that's what we all have a responsibility to do, is to continue to go above and beyond, particularly in new life. Also recognize we've just come through a pandemic, and we don't know where that pandemic is going. So we have to also be flexible and building continually on our traditional ways of life. And as you heard, the discussion around teaching our young children about the gathering of our foods and our medicines, we have to continue to do that. So we're, while we're following the seasonal ways of our people as migratory people, we also are flexible and have the endurance to get through, these diseases similar to what confronted our tribes and families historically. We're still here. And we have to all believe in that and continue saying, I'm still here tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow. Thank you.
All right. Well, we want to thank everybody. And we want to thank the Coeur d'Alene tribe. Like, they're hosting a Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Peoples gathering. And that's why I was able to have Patsy on today. So we want to thank them. And we want to thank Native Wellness for this awesome time of learning and understanding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both. Go enjoy your lunch now. Awesome. Thank you so much, Patsy and Lavina. I just love listening to Patsy, and I could just listen to her all day long. So we want to welcome you. This is our annual Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives, Women, People Awareness Day, and encouraging people to take action. You're taking action just by being here and listening. So thank you for that. We have a special guest, one of my awesome sisters, who just probably 45 minutes ago, I said, Rose, you want to come on? So thank you so much for coming here. So Rose works for the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. She's worked there for many, many years, has dedicated her professional life as well as her personal life to this movement and really helping Native women and families. And they have lots of stuff going on this week as well. So we wanted to invite Rose to come on and just share about her work and the activities that they have going on this week. So welcome, Rose, to our Power Hour.
Hi everybody. Shif Pachwai, Mmiw, Lashawat, Inmi. I was just saying good afternoon. My Indian name is Lashawat, and I was just saying, just welcoming our relatives here. And sorry if I'm a little feeling like I'm running around with my head cut off. There's a lot of, like you said, a lot of activity, but just really appreciate the invitation, Jolene and the Native Wellness Institute. And I'm so glad that you guys are able to have Patricia Whitefoot on. She's an elder from back home in White Swan. We both go to the same longhouse, so she's one of our respected elders. And so she's just an incredible elder, advocate, activist, grandma, sister. So, and I know that she's also doing double time over at Coeur d'Alene. So, but I just wanted to make mention of Patsy's work with us too, in just a little bit. But just a really quick introduction of myself. As Jolene mentioned, my name is Rose. My Indian name is Lashawat, and I come to you from the traditional homelands of the Ochin people in Maricopa, Arizona. But I'm originally from Washington State, the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Yakima Indian Nation. So I'm just down the road from Lavina. I mean, I know she's in Coeur d'Alene right now, looks like, but I grew up going to Nespelem, every summer, and for the powwow and stick game and those gatherings. So it was always good to see relatives every summer. So I'm missing home right now. So I hope, if anybody's from back home joining, hello to everybody. I currently serve as the Director of Policy and Research with the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. I've been honored to serve here for, almost 10 years now. It'll be 10 years in January. And most recently, it's been an honor to work closely with many of our surviving family members like Patsy. So NIWRC, under a non-federally funded project, was able to start regular meetings with surviving MMIW family members like Patsy. And we have several others from Montana, Arizona. We know Leanne Guy, who is the director of the Southwest Indigenous Women's Coalition. She's a part of that MMIW Family Advisory Group as well. And I know she's busy this week with her event. But through this partnership with our families and with our national partners, we've been able to, starting last year in 2021, we've been able to pull our families together to start talking about, the important awareness of MMIW, MMIP, MMIR. We have all the acronyms, right? But to really start looking at not only the individual cases and situations, unfortunately, that their families have had to experience, but the systems that they've encountered along the way, and the important changes that are needed. And so a part of our advisory group is to, like I mentioned, not only bring awareness, but to really put advocacy into action in terms of local, like a lot of the local work that is happening. I missed Patsy. I just caught the tail end, but I'm sure she was able to share with you just all the incredible advocacy and work that she has been a part of in Washington, in terms of working with her local, not only tribal leaders, working with the children and families, but also working with the Washington State, legislature, on important legislation regarding MMIW. So it's just a little bit of that in that local organizing and advocacy that that we work closely with like Patsy on, and like now the Coeur d'Alene event that she's actually presenting on. It's that partnership and coordination with again, that we're so honored to work with her in doing this, and I know that beyond that, there's a lot of local and regional work that she's doing. Her work with, sorry, I just got something in my eye, like the National Congress of American Indians, Violence Against Women Task Force meetings that we also regularly discuss MMIW issues and challenges, issues with the system. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I may have to take me off video for a second while I take care of my contact, but I'm still here. So let me just.
That's okay. Yeah, take care of yourself. That's fine, Rose.
Sorry, something just flew into my contact and it won't chill out. And they say you're not supposed to rub your eye, but
yeah, that's fine.
But so again, it's through that that advocacy on that local, that local organizing and action that is happening, and then how we connect that to our national work in terms of like our work with the with NIWRC, since we're a National Indian Resource Center, and a lot of the work that we do. So part of the work with Patsy and our families this week has been really organizing and elevating MMIW, MMIWG for the 2022 MMIW National Week of Action. And we kicked off by having a traditional launch on Friday, actually last Friday, with our several of our Native Hawaiian sisters. And then we moved right into our MMIW national briefing on MMIW. So we, Patsy was a part of that. She was our family member who participated in that national briefing. So that we hope that, folks who've joined us today will go to our website, the NIWRC.org website, and take a look at that MMIW national briefing, which can share with you all recent pushes for change, again, that our families are doing, because really a lot of what we're seeing is that the federal response has been slow, has been pretty much non-existent. Unfortunately, we have many relatives who are still going missing or being murdered, and the federal response is just lacking. And so we see the groundswell of movement and action, continued advocacy among our families. And so part of what you'll see on that briefing is, Patsy sharing her experience and her work. And then we had Mike Williams out of Akiak, one of the tribal leaders from Alaska, who also spoke on that national briefing, along with our partners at the National Congress of American Indians. We had Kelby Kennedy speak to the issues, and then our own Carrie Culfer. She's our Senior Native Affairs Advisor out of Washington, D.C. So again, we encourage folks to go back and look at the launch and the briefing, and then all through this week we've been partnering with our partners. So on Monday, our Native Hawaiian sisters offered a webinar, again specific to MMIW. So they shared their experiences and what they're working towards in Hawaii as our relatives from the islands. And so again, very, very powerful webinar, and that was on Monday. So again, that can be found on our website. Yesterday, the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center offered a webinar, again, very specific to MMIW, violence against Native women. And that was extremely, again, very powerful, very informative about the work that they're doing. And with the reauthorization of VAWA that just passed just this year, just recently, you know, again, there's a lot of changes going on in Alaska that will be happening as things roll out in terms of their work and advocacy moving forward with VAWA enhancements. So they're really rolling up their sleeves, and I know that our sisters up there are working extremely hard. Tammy Truett Giroux is their executive director, and Michelle Demert, who, you know, is their policy director as well. So I know they're working very, very hard and continue to do their continue to try to meet the needs of our Alaska Native sisters and MMIW in that area. So again, encouraging folks to listen to their webinar that is on our website. And then today we had our partners, our relatives from the Indian Law Resource Center join us, and they spoke to the international efforts in addressing violence against Indigenous women, you know, from the Human Rights Declaration framework. Again, very informative. They're just doing outstanding work. And so it's been, again, such an honor to work with them as well. And so we just did that webinar today. And then tomorrow, we hope that, you know, those of you who are listening in will join us tomorrow for our webinar, really uplifting the voices of our MMIW surviving family members. And so that will be tomorrow. I have to look at the time again tomorrow. I think it's at noon, or I'll have to double check. But so that will, again, highlight our many of our family members and their experiences and their recommendations. And so, you know, so again, part of this, part of our work with our families is really to, again, not only talk about the challenges that they've met individually, but just looking at where the states and the systems have failed. And so how we can work and to coordinate together in terms of making recommendations is a lot of what our focus is on. And I know that like Leanne Guy, as part of that working group, I know has developed and received funding for a circle of support for MMIW families for that support for families. And so it's been a really, really, you know, incredible effort, and just all of us pulling together at our virtual, I guess, kitchen table, you know, because if we were in person, that's what we would be doing is sitting with each other with our coffee and, you know, sitting around the table, you know, sharing and many times in ceremony as well. So, you know, so with our meetings and with our national partners, we always do our best in terms of opening up our meetings, you know, in a good way, and just recognizing our relatives and those that are missing or who have gone on. And so it's with this respect and that we continue to coordinate with them and to work together so that their voices are lifted up, their experiences are lifted up. And so this week, you know, the culmination and really building awareness for this MMIW National Week of Action is really a reflection of their voices, of their work, of their advocacy, their cries. And I know that May 5th, as we look to May 5th, that day is to honor Hannah Harris, who was a young woman out of Northern Cheyenne. She went missing in 2013, and her mother, Melinda Limberhand, who's again part of our working group, you know, she made that report to law enforcement, but it was a response that was not helpful. And so it was, you know, through the work of Melinda and her family and friends and volunteers who had to, you know, do a search party and to find Hannah, which they did. They found Hannah. And since then, I know Melinda has worked closely with her Montana legislature in terms of getting May 5th and the recognition as May 5th as the National Day of Awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And that's, so that's really been ongoing since 2017. And again, this year, it looks like Senator Daines out of Montana is introducing that resolution once again. And so, and I know that in IWRC, we've reached out to our contacts and folks to see if there will be a national day also recognized, so like a White House declaration as well. So I'm not sure where that's where that is at this point. It's just been a lot of communications, a lot going on, and so so again, so we just encourage folks to participate, to join. That webinar will be tomorrow. That's really lifting up our families' voices, and then we'll also be doing a social advocacy, which is with a Twitter storm and a Twitter chat. And then also our wonderful sister and partner, Jordan Marie Daniel, is also doing a run as well. And so all of this information can be found on our website. If you want to be a part of that run, walk, skip, you can find that information. But we, again, just really appreciate all of our, our families and their voices, lending to us, their time and their wisdom, like Patsy has shared. They're just, we stand with them, and we stand with all of our families. And we also, I wanted to share, I know this is probably kind of coming in a little, oh, it looks blurry.
Yeah, we can see some of it.
But it's our MMIW, it's our special edition on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. That also can be found on our website, and many of our family members contributed to articles within the magazine, and it's all specific to MMIW, MMIWG. So,
oh, beautiful.
Yeah, and it's free. You can folks can access it on our website for free. So
nice. Thank you so much, Rose. Thank you for sharing all those resources. I did put your website in the chat, so people can go there for all of the resources that she just shared, their calendar of events, the copies of the webinars that have already happened. There was a question, and I think that webinar will probably answer it. Is there any talks about including our Indigenous relatives, particularly those living in Mexico, Central and South America, who are forced into migration due to human rights abuses and desperate economic pressures at home, to be included under the MMIW, G2S movement?
Oh, so that's a really, really good question. And I know that the International Mayan League, they are a group of advocates who are speaking to those specific issues. And I know that they have been working closely with the National Congress of American Indians, and in IWRC, we've been coordinating with some of their folks as well in terms of addressing violence against Indigenous women, again, across the border, borders that we didn't create, right? But again, it's through those partnerships that we are working with them and continue to do so. And I think if you listen to the international webinar that we did today with the Indian Law Resource Center, it also touches a little bit on that same question, because I know that like I said, the International Mayan League have been working with NCAI in terms of maybe a resolution to help them with their work going forward. And then the Indian Law Resource Center is also another organization that they've been coordinating with too, in terms of really, again, not only elevating those issues, but just seeing what they can do using international mechanisms to really address, those issues for our relatives.
Nice.
And
Awesome. And then there's another question. Do you know of any support for East Coast Indigenous peoples, particularly with Florida Seminole ancestry?
Florida. Well, I mean, I know that we work closely with our tribal coalitions. And I'm trying to think, I thought that maybe there might have been a tribal coalition wanting to develop in that area, but I would have to check. I don't know if, if the Seminole, if they themselves, because part of, again, of the work that we do is to really advocate for tribes, so that there can be a tribal response to MMIW. And of course that there's a lot that is tied into that, but but for the East Coast side, I mean, again, I know the National Congress of American Indians, that is a way through the NCAI Violence Against Women Task Force that happens, and that's national. So under that NCAI task force umbrella, there is an MMIW subcommittee. So I just encourage, folks, from the East Coast to join those important conversations and discussions. Now there is an NCAI Violence Against Women Task Force meeting this June, but it's in Anchorage, Alaska. And I don't think this year they're able to offer a hybrid, where we can join by Zoom, because it's all been virtual, right?
Yeah.
But I think this go around in June, they're doing it in person. And so, but we'll see, hopefully the next one then will be, folks can join, by Zoom. So, and that would be in October. So,
Okay.
so maybe just, look at the NCAI, their events website to see when the next NCAI task force meeting will be. Because again, that's open to anybody and everybody, wherever you are in the country, Alaska, East Coast, South.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome, thanks. I also put in the chat for USET, United South and Eastern Tribes.
Oh, yes.
They may be a resource as well. So
yes, USET, yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Excellent.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rose, for being here. And just thank you for your dedication to this movement and the work that you do. Much respect and gratitude for you. And I miss you.
Yeah, I miss you too. And I wanted to say too, I know, Jolene, you've worked with like the city of Portland in terms of, creating, local like resolutions and like other, citywide recognition of MMIW. So again, that's incredible. And then again, that's the grassroots movement right there.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about next, and to share kind of some of the local things that we're doing. Yeah. Awesome.
So I'm so glad you had Patsy on, and I'm not sure who else, but I see somebody else who's probably coming on. So please. And should I type in my my email in case anybody has any other?
Yes, I'll put it in here. I know,
you got it.
I know it by heart.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you for, again, this is the more people that we can reach, in our work and advocacy. And then one final thing I would say in terms of what folks can do for action is to, since we reauthorized VAWA, it would be the reauthorization of FIPSA, the Family Violence and Prevention and Services Act. So we're just really encouraging folks to reach out to your members of Congress and, in terms of getting FIPSA passed, because it's through FIPSA that we have advocacy services and shelter support and other prevention efforts, because MMIW is preventative. And so we're really, this FIPSA is really important for our Native peoples.
Nice.
So
services. Excellent.
Yeah. And also just, encouraging the DOJ in terms of implementation of Savannah's Act, and then the DOI in terms of the Not Invisible Act Commission, which I know that our Interior Secretary, Deb Haaland, has been, a wonderful leader on, but we're still waiting for that commission to be announced. And I think there will be an announcement tomorrow. And so I saw something that went out that I believe Secretary Haaland will be a part of, along with Lucy Simpson, our executive director, and Fawn Sharp. So
yes, I'm just putting that in the chat as well. So tomorrow, May 5th at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time.
Yeah.
So you can figure out your time zone from there.
Okay.
doi.gov/live for that one. Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much, Jillian. Miss you.
Oh, love you, Rose. Take care.
Right. You too.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Awesome. That was amazing. And Shanoa, if you want to turn your camera on and join us. A few resources I wanted to share before Shanoa introduces herself. We had Patsy Whitefoot on earlier, and I'm going to share my screen because she's involved with a podcast that's called War Cry Podcast. And they are out of the Yakima Nation. It's an all-women crew that do this podcast. And you can kind of, I'll scroll through here real quick, and they have these awesome t-shirts as well. So it lists some of their other ones. There's the creators on there. It's pretty awesome. I helped facilitate a panel with them the other day. So that's another resource, warcrypodcast.com. You can go there for more information as well. So here locally, the Native Wellness Institute, we are headquartered outside of Portland, Oregon, and we get involved in all kinds of local projects and movements and efforts and things like that. And this year was our 5th year being involved with a week of awareness and action activities led by the City of Portland's Tribal Relations Office. And one of the cool things I just want to share about that is I always say that one of the lasting impacts of colonization is competition. And competition plays out in many different ways. It plays out by people, hoarding information or resources. It plays out through a term that, gets thrown around a lot, lateral oppression. When we think about how competition, pushes for that oftentimes. So it plays out in many different ways. And the opposite of competition is collaboration. And for many of us, collaboration isn't a norm, right? Some of us don't know how to collaborate because we've never done it before, or it's not modeled for us, right? What is modeled for us is that competition piece and, tearing people down. And the opposite of that is working together and lifting others up. And so I wanted to share my screen again to show what's happening here locally that the Native Wellness Institute is involved in. We're calling it, the theme is, all my windows are open there, sorry about that. The theme is Tending Our Roots, City of Portland 2022 MMIP Awareness Week. And you can see all of the activities that have taken place already and all of the ones that are upcoming, including proclamations. Tomorrow is our in-person day of awareness, a community gathering, all sorts of things that are going on, which is a beautiful display of collaboration. And that's why, Shanoa, I wanted to invite you on today just to share a little bit about your involvement with this work and some of the highlights. So welcome, Shanoa.
Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Shanoa. I'm a member of the Puyallup tribe. Is my sound okay? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Oh, good. I just sat down. We've been on the go. I'm actually in the SWAT Hufted at the Puyallup. I'm on the Puyallup lands right now, and visiting our Puyallup relatives. And I just stopped by the office, and I told them I was gonna come on, and they're like, "Do you want to use our sound booth?" And I was like, "Okay." Cool. So I feel pretty pretty fancy right now.
I just said that's like, wow, fancy.
Yeah, I feel yeah, they it was really good to see everyone. And yeah, it's awesome. I'm super grateful for our family here. But yeah, so I think I got involved with some of the official planning the year before COVID. I think that was 2018 and 2019 were the first years that we got involved with that planning. But prior to that, I had worked as a domestic violence advocate over at the Native American Youth and Family Center from about 2010 until sometime. And so, and prior to that, I had just kind of provided some just community support to survivors, etc. And I think it's been interesting to me how much the movement has grown and the awareness has grown, because I know, you know, I'm growing up in the 90s in a place where, you know, there are high incidences of domestic violence and assault. There wasn't really a lot of talk about it. And like I had never heard the words domestic and violence even like put together like as a thing when I was growing up. So you know, I think that I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to see how much awareness people are getting, and so we can really raise attention to the seriousness of how this is, the vast impact it's having in our communities. And the other oh, I kind of trailed off for a second. I was thinking about something and it was like here and then gone. Just the amount of resources that are more available, I think, for folks, and there's still not enough. And what I was going to say was in regards also to the awareness, I think that we are just beginning to see, this is like the tip of the iceberg, because I think that our numbers are probably more staggering than we know. And I think that you guys may have mentioned this earlier about a lot of misidentification of Native people, you know, especially if that person is not able to speak for themselves. You know, if someone can misidentify them as another race. And so I think that this problem is really much bigger than we're just now starting to realize. So about the collaboration that we have with the city of Portland, I'm really thankful for the work that like Laura John is working on and getting the support of she's a tribal relations works in the tribal relations office. I can't remember her exact title, but
and people are having a hard time hearing you, Shnoa.
Oh no.
Yeah.
If I talk closer,
maybe that will help. Yeah.
Is that better? Am I
yeah,
really
that's better.
Sorry. Oh no.
I could hear you fine, but yeah, they couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay. I'll try to talk louder.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just really thankful for the work that everyone has come together in community. And you know, I think it started out with just kind of piece by piece, everyone, you know, doing work in different areas. Some people working more with advocacy, and some people working with just trying to find grants and resources for survivors. Some people being survivors, and some people looking for their relative who might have went missing. And so everyone in community just kind of getting together and say, let's do this you know, local event where we can really raise attention, because we are located on the I-5 corridor, and I can't remember what the term is, but a lot of Native people are targeted and trafficked because we are on this I-5. And so, you know, someone who goes missing in, let's say up here in Washington, might end up down in LA without resource, and especially if they're being what is the word? If they're not allowed to use social media, or if they're not allowed to use their own phones and don't have access to money or things like that. You know, I know that a lot of folks are being trafficked that way. And so I think the goal with our events, in addition to raising awareness, is also to provide safe space for survivors and for survivors' families and for victims' families as well, to provide a healing space, which is why we're having, in addition to having like, you know, like the event that we're having tomorrow, to raise that awareness in public and really create visibility. But we're also doing, self-care activities, like Katsi Redout came, who is a world champion jingle dress dancer, and she does all of these amazing yoga classes, and she's going to do that with community. So I'm really excited for that, because she's just got this healing spirit, and it's been really great to partner with everyone in the local area.
Yeah, awesome. And the activities that have happened already, so we're kind of doing like a hybrid this week. So we're doing some in person and then some virtual. So for example, yesterday, Acacia did virtual power yoga. That is, you can go to, on Facebook, you can go to the City of Portland Tribal Relations Facebook page, and that is on there, in addition to the virtual panel with Patsy Whitefoot, who was on earlier, her and her team talking about their podcast and kind of what drives them to do their work. There was another virtual panel discussion with Mary Catherine Nagel. So all of those recordings are on the City of Portland Tribal Relations website. Yesterday, we also did Portland Community College did a virtual panel on MMIW as well, and that's on their Facebook page too. So these are just examples of the awesome collaboration that's happening this week. We meet virtually on a committee, and we brainstorm a theme, we brainstorm the types of things that we want to do, and then we make it happen, right? So I think it's a beautiful example of working together in a good way. It's a beautiful example of women and men and other genders that are involved doing this work, but really uplifting one another, right? To bring awareness and to take action. And that's kind of this year's theme, is about bringing awareness and taking action. Like, for example, you being here today is an example of taking action, so we're grateful for everyone being here today, sharing these events, having conversations with your family, attending, virtually or in person, are other ways that you can take action. And you just heard from Patsy, you heard from Rose about other ways that we can take action in this movement. One of the panel members yesterday, I think it was, talked about the silent epidemic, right? Like this is a huge thing, but there's so much silence about it. And this is in part what we're trying to break as well, breaking that silence by bringing the awareness and talking about it and encouraging others to have conversations too. So I'm gonna just share my screen once again real quick. So this is the work of the City of Portland Tribal Relations Office. Laura John is their director. Miranda and Stone, two of her staff members, have been working super hard at the coordination. They're kind of been responsible for what I call herding the cats with all the moving pieces to make sure that everything happens. Amazing things have happened. People that work for the roads department as well are putting up signs around town with, Strong Heart's phone number, which is another resource I'll put in the chat in a minute. The Morrison Bridge and the Expo Center at the Convention Center have red lights on it, as another way to bring awareness. Somebody was telling me they saw something on the news advertising some of the events coming up. Tomorrow, the in-person Day of Awareness community gathering, we have canoes coming in and speakers and, a walk across the bridge and, food and, different things like that. So there's some amazing things happening here in Portland. So Shanoa, we have like a minute left or so for our power hour today. Are there any final thoughts, words of encouragement that you would like to share with our viewers today?
Yeah, I just, well, huge shout out to all of the planning committees, our committee, you know, all the other members in the Portland area, as well as nationally and internationally, really raising up this this very important issue and helping to keep our survivors safe. And I also want to recognize the impact that COVID has had on a lot of on Indigenous people, you know, here and in Canada and all over. And I think a lot of people are feeling isolated and feeling or more at risk or more vulnerable. And so I just want to, you know, put some good thoughts out there. And if you do know someone or if you are someone who is needing some support, please reach out and use those resources to get into a safe space. And I think they're all in the comments below. Also, yeah, just want to uplift all of our communities and you know, and thank you all for like you said, tuning in and being part of this work and not you know, I don't know how to say it. You know, a lot of times we get stuck in these cycles and knowing that something is happening in someone else's home and not knowing what to do. And you know, I don't have any advice to offer, but always other than to just kind of be a safe person, and you know, not to hold that judgment over someone's head if they're not in a space where they can leave or where they can get to a safe place. But it's so important that we have all of our community members supporting and being you know, a person who they know that they can trust, that they won't be judged, because I think that's why, you know, or not, it's not why, but perhaps it's one of the reasons why folks are not able to leave or get into safe spaces, because they don't feel like, if I go, people and then if I have to go back because I don't have money or I don't have housing or my kids are, you know, needing their other parent, you know, it's really difficult. And so just always, you know, meeting people where they're at and being that safe place to where they can go and reach out. So I'm sorry about the volume. I'm really trying to talk louder. I think it is the computer. I'm sorry. But yeah, anyway, just thank you all for tuning in and thanks for the invite, and thank you to Rose and I think Patsy was on earlier, for your continued work and advocacy. I really appreciate you all.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Shanoa. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. We hope that you take that healthy risk and jump on an activity online, take a healthy risk and go to an event in person, and do what you feel comfortable with taking action this week to bring awareness to the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, missing and murdered Indigenous people, missing and murdered Indigenous women, and LGBTQS2S community. Together we can make a difference, and together we are making a difference, right? All right. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.